we're officially less than 1 week away from the first OWCS LAN event of the year, the Champions Clash being held in Hangzhou, China, between 8 teams. 2 NA, 2 EU, 2 Korea, and 2 China, all going head-to-head in one 8-team bracket. And today, I'm going to give you a brief rundown with my predictions, a preview of what's to come, and my general order of these teams. I'm going to place them in tiers based off of how likely I think it is for them to win this tournament. So let's just get it out of the way. The 2 teams with the most realistic chance, I'd argue the only 2 teams with a realistic chance of taking home first place, are Crazy Raccoon and Team Falcons. Surprise, surprise, the Korean overlords are still at the top, and they're the overwhelming favorites, because no duh. This ain't like the Overwatch League days where everyone's integrated together. Korea's off doing their own thing, and once again, just like in the old days, they are clearly numerous steps ahead of the rest of the competition, and I just don't see how anyone's going to catch up anytime soon with the level of play we have seen from this region. In terms of Falcons and Crazy Raccoon, I'd say right now, based off of the hot hand and how they've been doing, you may favor Falcons as the #1 team heading into the tournament. They have the most confidence. They beaten Crazy Raccoon yet again in a big-time tournament. And as of right now, they look really scary. They're starting to gain more confidence as a team on dive. They're letting Hanbin play Winston more, and he's actually looking effective out there, which is really, really important, especially with Mauga seemingly being a lot less relevant now. They're going to need to depend on him in those situations, and if he continuously shows up like we saw in Gibraltar against Crazy Raccoon, Falcons, they're going to be looking real pretty in this series, in this tournament, because they have all the weapons you could need and then some. And it all starts with the DPS line still. To me, that is the ultimate strength of this team. Stalker and Proper are absolutely insane. They've picked up from where they left off in the playoffs last season, and if anything, they look better than they ever have before, especially Stalker. This guy feels like the MVP of all of OWCS so far, with the flexibility he's shown, the consistent pop-offs. This dude's playing on another level. Hit scan and flex DPS alike, doesn't matter. This guy's insane. Him and Proper are just an unfair duo still. It's actually ridiculous how flexible they are at a moment's notice. They can both play any role in the game essentially, and that makes them not only incredibly difficult to prepare for, but also it makes it so they can play any composition in the entire game without seeing any fall off because, again, they can play everything under the sun. All of that alone is pretty crazy. It's a loaded team, but there's also the fact that they're so damn clutch. It feels like since the Asia playoffs last year and onward, they've just been on a different level. Whenever it's a truly meaningful scenario, they show up big time. They dominate. They look more composed than everybody else combined. Even though Mauga seems to be their biggest strength in recent memory, it's not to say that they can't succeed on other comps. We saw a preview of it in that tournament against Crazy Raccoon in the finals. They did just fine in the dive setup, amongst other things. We know they can play Rush. We're seeing a lot of Ramacha recently, at least in Face It League, and Hanbin's got that under wraps. I think this team's going to be successful no matter what. It just comes down to if they want it more than their adversary, aka Crazy Raccoon. And just knowing how much they've had their number right now, you again could argue that they should be the favorites because of that. But it's not to say that Crazy Raccoon are down and out. They've been having a hard time against Falcons recently, but they still are an incredible Overwatch team that dominate just about any other team out there without even a second thought. And with the Mauga setup not being as relevant, at least on paper right now, that's going to be good for them. That's never been their strong suit. That's typically when they lose to Falcons. If they can truly focus on their craft again, get really good at the dive setup, maybe get some Junbin Wrecking Ball going again, it's going to be tougher to take them down. They just need to find their confidence and their swagger back again. We have to see if they can hang in there when some rush compositions need to be played, while also being extremely dominant on a lot of the dive maps. And there seem to be a lot of dive maps in the current hero pool, which certainly benefits this team as well. If Junbin can cause chaos, if Lip has some space to maneuver, if Heesang finds his early form from last year again, this team's going to do just fine. We know from tournaments past this team can be extremely clutch, and they definitely have a massive chip on their shoulders right now. Falcons have been handling them a lot recently, and this team absolutely hates losing as well. So I don't see why there isn't a world where Crazy Raccoon can't clap back, especially with Mauga seemingly disappearing. This team has all the superstars in the world. It's just on them with the execution at this point and to get out of their own heads. We need to see all of their superstars show up big time and outperform the Falcons players like they have in the past. Regardless, it seems like these two are on an ultimate collision course right now, and it would be a shocker if anybody else ends up in the finals aside from them. Not for the other tiers, or the ones that I should say are competing for third place. So I guess you could say in like my A tier or my third place tier, my lower bracket finals tier, I'm going to throw in Virtus Pro, SSG, and NTMR. As of right now, I'd argue all these teams have a really good chance of making it the furthest out of the Western teams. I don't have confidence that any of them are necessarily a lot better than any of the others, which may sound a little crazy just because Virtus Pro have performed very well recently, and they handled their business while going undefeated in their region. You got to tip your hat off to them for that. That is a really impressive feat, even if EU wasn't always the best in terms of the level of play, even if it was a little disappointing at times. This team gelled together very well from the start, and their confidence grew really fast. I mean, Shockwave and Jwoo are a very lethal duo. Vestola's been reliable for years now, and Gal and Fixa maybe go a bit under the radar as a support line, but at the same time, I don't think this team has been challenged all that much yet. I know there's been a couple of scary moments here and there in EU, but I feel like this team hasn't faced any true adversity yet, and that's what kind of scares me going into a tournament with a bit more pressure on the line. I'm a little worried they may crumble under that, and there's the fact that right now it seems like Dive is maybe making a bit of a comeback, and if Winston is the tank you need to rely on, I don't know if VP are in the best position, just because they only have Vestola, who's more so known for Diva, in the off-tank stuff, but at the same time, maybe they make it work. There's a lot of dive maps, but there's also some really solid rush maps, so it's going to depend on their strategy. And based off of what I've seen from their coaching, maybe that puts them in a good position to do well after all. It could go either way with Virtus Pro. They could be disappointing because of the Winston and because of that lack of adversity, or maybe the confidence and the strategy and the crazy level of play some of their playmakers have will help them prevail. As for Space Station and NTMR, I regard them in a very similar light to Virtus Pro. I don't think there's all that much of a gap like other people do. I think any of these three teams could beat each other on any given day. We've already seen it with NTMR and SSG, but I think right now with where the meta could potentially be at, that it may actually favor the NA teams a little bit more because they have shown to be pretty good Winston teams. To me, it all starts off with NTMR. This is the team that didn't have all that much to prove. The pressure wasn't on them, but they performed beyond expectations by beating both partner teams in NA to make it here. They got first place in North America out of nowhere, beating both teams in the Ultimate Gauntlet back-to-back. Liquid and SSG didn't stand a chance, and it's crazy to me. Well, maybe that's a bit too far, but you know what I mean. NTMR was able to prevail over both of them, and it had to do with playing up to their strengths, a lot of which they could probably still very heavily emphasize in the current format. Again, I'm just running under the assumption that we see some similar things to Faceit League, and if that's the case, NTMR could be sitting pretty. A lot of that stuff they are already being very successful with in the NA Stage 1 tournament. Focusing on the Kuffa Winston, which is a comfort pick, and then letting Lethal and Zera absolutely cook when it comes to the Zera, Tracer, and Genji, and then Lethal just dominating on whatever hit scan he wants. He tends to have a lot of space to operate, and he makes these teams pay. It seems like a lot of these guys are coming into their own while trying to prove themselves. Lethal is showing that he's one of the best Western DPS in the game. Zera showing that he is arguably the best flex DPS not named Sugar Free from North America. Some people may even take Zera right now over him. You have Kuffa, who has been wanting to get to this level for a very long time. Admiral, he's had some ups and downs, but he's been incredibly clutch as of late. And then you have, in my opinion, the biggest strength of this team, the biggest X factor, and that's Ultraviolet. This dude played out of his goddamn mind in North America in Stage 1. And if Ana continues to see a lot of heavy play, he could be the reason this team ends up getting top 3 or some kind of high placement. His Bionade connections, his level of competence on this hero, it's just unmatched. This guy's going on a generational run right now, and I don't know if any non-Korean Anas can handle him. I mean, maybe Monk, but it's been a long time since we've seen him play at that level. Nightmare have shown they're an absolutely sick team that can punch up to the highest weight class, and at the end of the day, as a non-partner team, they don't have nearly as much pressure to perform as like a SSG or a Virtus Pro. It's a lot different with them, and that's a weapon they can certainly use to their advantage. With that clutch gene, with the lack of pressure on their shoulders, I'd look out for Nightmare. This is my dark horse. But don't be forgetting about SSG now. It was disappointing to see them only get second in the North American tournament, but generally speaking, they were the most consistent team in North America in the first stage, and rightfully so. This team is absolutely loaded on paper, and I think if we go more towards a dive and rush setup, that it'll benefit them a lot more than what we saw in stage 1, where things were a bit more confusing at times, where it was a bit more Malga-centric. Kellen can play more up to his bread and butter with the Winston. That's what's let him have a very successful career up until this point. And I think if you can heavily emphasize him and Sugarfree making dives together, that you're going to see a lot of good results. You're going to see some dominant maps from this team at times, and they have a great supporting cast as well. There's no player that I dislike on this team. It's just a matter of playing together more, of making less of those mental lapses and having better communication. In my opinion, despite them losing 4-2 to Nightmare, this game could have been a lot closer, as there were just a lot of weird decisions made by this team that costed them fights, potentially even maps. If they can work on that stuff, if they can figure out some of the minute details, if you want to say, you're going to see them bounce back. And again, with Dive and some of their strengths on the horizon, that could make some of that stuff a lot easier, and I think you'll see a more competent level of play from this SSG team, as they'll be right in the thick of it to be one of the best, hence why I'm putting them in this potential third place team tier. Where things get a bit more dicey is after this. Next, I'm going to have my I don't know tier, where they could be a lot lower than where I'm talking about right now, or significantly higher. And that is once again. They, alongside Team CC, made it out of China, and to the surprise of no one, once again basically didn't even break a sweat to make it here. All their games were easy, it was child's play, and considering their roster, not too much of a surprise. It is all the familiar faces that we know and love of that Hangzhou Spark team essentially from a couple of years ago, but instead of having the normal suspect at main support, they have Mew, formerly known as Yveltal and Xerneas. And this team can still be very nasty on dive. They played it quite a bit, and nobody could match them on it, to the surprise of no one. It's all of those lovable faces going back out there, trying to compete on the big stage once again. And while it doesn't feel like they should be as good as some of these other teams, just because they haven't had the opportunity to practice or play against them a lot, you can never really count them out. Just knowing what happened last year in the Esports World Cup, how they randomly just beat Falcons for no reason, despite not really having that much practice under their belts up until that moment. It may not even matter just because they can force out that dive mirror, that ego matchup, and they can win it because they're just so experienced on it, and it's their ultimate comfort zone. Gushwei on Winston, Shy still being as dominant as ever on Sojourn, Leave on Tracer, playoff Monk, tournament Monk coming up to the plate on Ana. It feels like a fever dream that we get to experience it yet again. I'm just wondering if it's actually going to come in full force this time around. Again, it really does depend on a couple of factors with this team. One is if they're able to keep up with the best of the best. But also, you have to think about it from the whole meta perspective. What can they get away with playing? Are they going to be able to play a lot of dive on a map-to-map basis? Are other teams going to adjust and force them to play rush, amongst other things? How can they handle that if it does happen? There's a lot of strategy involved with it. There's a lot of uncertainty with the meta, and that could either greatly benefit this team or absolutely destroy their hopes and dreams. Hence why I'm very confused about them right now. There's a lot of uncertainty with this team, a lot of potential, a lot of upside, but a lot of things that can go horribly wrong. I want to believe in them just for namesake and what I saw in the past, but every year is different. I've learned my lesson with that. So I can't be totally confident in this group to be as good as SSG, Virtus Pro, or Nightmare. On paper, they should be better, but I don't know if I'm willing to say with absolute certainty that they'd beat any of these teams in a series. They're going to have a chance against all of them, yes, But with the strategy involved and the potential lack of practice, I am not totally on board just yet. In my mid-tier, if you want to call it that, I guess, I just got Qadsiah. They're by themselves here, because they definitely played better than I thought they would in EU. They played up to their max potential, and they did well for themselves. But right now, with how the meta is evolving, I just don't have all that much confidence in them. I think they needed the Mauga setup to be as successful as they were. Maybe they could do alright on the rush maps if they can play their cards right, but if there's a lot of heavy emphasis on the dive, I fear this team may fall behind a little bit. Checkmate's still good, but not necessarily in his prime anymore. Maybe Lapda can still cook on the Sojourn, and Landon is always a very dependable player as well. But right now I think that the meta is shifting away from some of their strengths, so it's going to be more of a challenge for them. They did well to get this far, but compared to, let's just say, all the other Western teams competing in this thing, they feel like the clear-cut worst to me, at least right now, before getting the opportunity to watch them. It's just that I don't know if every piece on this team can compete right now. I don't know if they have what it takes against these fully loaded rosters that won't be struggling nearly as much. I'd be pleasantly surprised if they do well, and they have some of the pieces to make it happen, but I feel that the sum of the pieces is going to hold them back ultimately. And then that leaves us with Team CC, another team that I was pleasantly surprised to see make it this far. My money was not on them to be in second place, that much is for sure. I thought that privilege was going to rock esports. That team was absolutely sick with the likes of Bellows, Rhea, Choice, Juan, and Dia. That was the one I was rooting for. They felt like they were strong enough to get top 2, but they actually lost in reverse sweep fashion to this Team CC team, so you gotta give them some respect. They've got a lot of other Chinese pro staples. Gaga, Farway, Pineapple, Kaneki. It's not necessarily a bad team, it's just in comparison to these other rosters, clearly they are like the worst, if not the second worst. To me, they just lack any sort of real splash player at any position. A lot of guys I respect, but none of these guys are truly in their primes anymore, and it's hard to see them carrying and making enough of a difference for things to really matter in the end for these guys. These feel like one of the perennial last place teams that will get eliminated in the first round. And that is my general opinion on how I'd rank all these teams right now, their journeys to get here, and my general feeling on them heading into this tournament. Now, just a couple of other important pieces of information before revealing my tournament winner and my bracket. First thing, I'd mentioned the map pool to you guys and how it seems like there's a good balance of rush and dive maps. Just to let you know what that looks like, Control as Lijiang Oasis Ilios, Hybrid is Blizzard World Kings Row, Push has every map except for Caliseo, Escort is Circuit, Junkertown, and Route, and then Flashpoint will only be Saravasa. So yeah, as you can see, there's a good mix, there's some good dive maps in there, but also with a map like Junkertown, or with Circuit, let's say, you can very much change up the pace. So we'll have to see how some teams play around with that, if at all, as it could end up dictating how far some of these squads go in the tournament. It's also worth noting this tournament's going to run for Friday through Sunday this week, so mark your calendars for that. And in the first round of the bracket, that being the upper bracket quarterfinals, just like with DreamHack Sweden, it's only going to be first to 2, so those series can only go 3 maps at most. Granted, there are any ties or anything like that. And in general, I think that's a good thing because of some of the lopsided matches that we're going to reveal in just a second here. So for my tournament winner, who I think is going to go on to win the first LAN of the year, I'm going with Crazy Raccoon. I think Falcons hold more of the cards right now, but I think with the meta shift on the horizon, with play style maybe being a little different, that Crazy Raccoon can come back on top again. I just don't think they're going to stay down forever with this type of team. I can't see them playing little brother to Falcons forever. That's never been the type of team that they have been, and I think Falcons' luck has to run out eventually. I think with a lot of time off, there's a chance for them to cool down a bit, and that could lead to Crazy Raccoon coming back on top. I think they're just going to have a good tournament. I think Junbin's going to go off on Winston, Lip will have a bit more room to operate, and the DPS can maybe close the gap a little bit in some way. Maybe it's through Junbin just not letting Proper and Stalker doing their thing, or Lip having an out-of-body experience. I don't know what it is, but I just think they're going to go off. Shu, maybe with some more opportunities on Ana, can make those additional plays. It's going to be tough. I wouldn't be surprised if they fall very short in a final match against Falcons. But right now, I'm going to put my money on them because I think it'd be kind of boring if Falcons just win everything this year. This rivalry has been glorious over the last year and a half, and I don't think it's going to end here. I doubt it's going to become lopsided in any way, shape, or form. Crazy Raccoon are the ones with the chip on their shoulders now. The roles have reversed, and I think they're going to clutch out and win in a more comfortable type of vibe with the meta. If not, obviously it's going to be Falcons. It can really only be one of the two, unless once again decide that they're the best players in the game for whatever reason. As for how I think the rest of this tournament goes, I believe, personally, that NTMR is going to get third place. I could be coping hard here just because on paper, they feel worse than Virtus.pro or SSG, but I've been saying this NTMR team on paper has been worse than some of these teams for a while now, but they have continuously proved me wrong, and I think this team is unbelievably clutch. They've had to face adversity in some tough games, unlike Virtus.pro, and the meta's in such a great place for them right now. That X Factor and Ultraviolet on Ana potentially, them just being a good Winston team, Zera and Lethal proving themselves as such a great duo. I think this is NTMR's time to shine. They're going to go out there, they're going to ball out, and they'll get third place. My hot take is that I think Virtus.pro and once again both won't do all that well. Once again, because, again, I don't know how much confidence I have in them with some of those weird uncertainties. And with Virtus.pro, I don't like that lack of adversity that they faced. I feel like they're bound to have a rough moment eventually. And now feels like the time. I think they're going to go home rather early in this thing. They're going to meet up with, like, NTMR or SSG in the lower bracket second round, and they're going to get punked. They're not going to expect it, and they're going to lose. Maybe because the meta isn't in the best place for them. I could be coping hard, but I just can't get over the fact that I feel like Winston's going to be somewhat relevant in this tournament. And with once again, I feel like they're either going to be really surprising and like beat Falcons in the upper bracket semis, or they're just going to lose first round to Virtus.pro, then maybe get a W against like Qadsiah, and then just lose in the next round against like NTMR or something like that. I don't know, that's just the vibe I'm getting. I feel like they're going to disappoint the fans in a similar light to the Esports World Cup. I don't know if they're fully ready for the stage yet, just because it's been so long, and they need to adjust to this level of competition. I could be severely wrong there. I mean, they have the talent to pull it off, but I don't know, man. I just can't shake that vibe. I don't want to live too much in the past. I have this bad feeling, especially with hero bans being involved and with certain map selections on the table. I don't think they're always going to have their way, and especially in those non-Winston setups, I expect this team will struggle, at least to a certain degree. That's all I can really say about the bracket. I mean, a lot of it is just hypotheticals. The exacts are unknown, of course. I can't see the future, but we can at least zero in on the first round and go over that super quick. It looks like all the games, maybe except for one, are going to be blowouts. The only game that could be even remotely close, at least to me, is Virtus.pro versus once again. That one could be tough to decide, depending on how much stock you put into once again, and if they're ready for this level of competition again. Virtus.pro, to me, feel like the better team, but again, they may struggle as well if there's a certain amount of Winston being played. It all depends on who does better with their map picks and their hero bans, in my opinion here. To me, that maybe favors Virtus.pro a little bit more. They're slightly more versatile, but who knows, man. That's like the one intriguing matchup that I see as a 50-50 coin toss. And unfortunately, it's only first to two, so there's very little margin for error here. But hey, maybe with that home crowd buff, once again, we'll find a way to prevail. Wouldn't shock me at all, but I think they're going to struggle more than people would like to admit. Hate me if you'd like for that, but that's just how I feel. I pray this game is good at least, because based off of the other matches, yeah, I'm not really vibing with those. I doubt Falcons will struggle without Qadsiah. NTMR probably beat CC easily, and Crazy Raccoon are just a much better team than SSG. I don't make the rules, that's just how things go. We gotta weed out the elite teams from the mid ones at the start, and then we go from there. But that basically wraps up my thoughts on this tournament, who I think's gonna win, where I think all these teams are positioned. Let me know what you think down in the comments below, who you think's gonna do well, and who you ultimately think will win in the end. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and also subscribe to the channel if you want more OWCS discussions just like this. Peace.